Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moving Screen. I am Brendan Quinn of The Athletic. I'm with Dylan Burkhart of umhoops.com. Dylan,
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
so this is going to be a podcast about college basketball. We will discuss Michigan and Michigan State, two of the premier programs in the country, along with the Big Ten and everything in between. Here's how this is going to go. We're going to record this podcast weekly and maybe drop a few unexpected episodes here and there. We're not going to be lining up random guests every week to ask their opinions. This is just going to be Dylan and I talking hoops, breaking down Michigan, Michigan State, and everything else. Dylan is, in my opinion, as good as it gets in breaking down the game on the analytical side, not just on Michigan, but on everything. And I, as you may know, enjoy making declarative statements rooted in baseless opinions. So that's going to be this podcast. We hope that you subscribe. We hope that you tell your friends. And when we ask for reader question or listener questions, that you jump in. So here we go. We're going to start this episode by looking, obviously, at Michigan State and Kansas. Dylan and I were kind of thinking that this first episode would just be season previews, but when it comes to Michigan State, Dylan, I think you kind of agree that the season preview kind of plays itself out in this opening game because, you know, when you get to play the number one ranked team in the country on a neutral court, you'll probably show a little bit of who you are for the year.
Yeah, it seems like the Champions Classic pretty much sets the tone for Michigan State in any given season, sets expectations, sets sort of where they have to go, and it's sort of a barometer that they can kind of stick to throughout the year. And it's not really a better measuring stick to start stuff off against than Kansas, who's absolutely loaded this year.
I mean, I haven't gone back, actually, I haven't really gone back and looked at how previous years, like their performance actually ended up matching up with that season, you know, like the quality of team that they ended up being. Do you have any examples or any thoughts in your mind of like specific years that actually kind of showed what they were early, spelling out what they became later?
I feel like it sort of sets the narrative, right?
Right.
Last year, they went head-to-head with Duke. They knew they could. They lost, but it was, we're going to have to get back to that point, and we know we can play at that level. Other years, there's sort of been teams that maybe didn't have as high expectations where they overachieve in the Champions Classic, and all of a sudden they start rocking and rolling. I think a couple of those Denzel Valentine teams really play well in Chicago maybe, and that kind of sets the tone. I know that they're undefeated against Kansas in the Champions Classic, which is a nice little perk headed into this year, I would say.
And I do remember back to, what was it, 2 years ago when they played Kentucky, right? Bridges' freshman year. And it was kind of billed as this like, oh, freshman versus freshman, they're very evenly matched, blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, Michigan State just got totally overwhelmed in that game. And that did actually kind of speak to, like, that team was never quite as good as I think anyone. Now, they had some injuries, they had some other stuff that happened, you know, but I don't think it was ever quite the team that we thought it might be early in the year.
That's fair. And I think when you have these young teams, I don't think that team ever becomes what it was later in the year at a certain point if they don't have those games. I think it's just a great way for them to start the season off and just get going with it. And you're not going to boost yourself up playing a bunch of teams who are in the 200-300 level range that's just winning by 40 every night. I mean, you need to get tested and see what they've got.
Yeah, I mean, I love it as for my job. It's such a fascinating thing when you talk about like that season narrative and stuff, like the amount of just kind of, all right, you are what you are right now, and you get to see it in kind of like the most gruesome way possible, because like if you're not ready to play, like it can really go poorly. And what's interesting, I think, this year in this game is that Michigan State is, I feel like I kind of know what Michigan State is, and I know that personnel, and I, even though they're without Bridges and Jackson, I just think that their bodies, what their guys are capable of, I have a feeling for it. Whereas Kansas is kind of like Michigan State 2 years ago, where it is a completely new team, with the Lawson guys. And I guess they have a lot of guys who tested the waters and came back, but they have a freshman backcourt. They've got these transfers in. Like, it is just kind of a lot of mishmashed pieces. Extraordinarily talented, don't get me wrong. But, like, what do they look like and how do they fit in game one, right? So, I don't know. I mean, I know you've already looked into their dudes and what this thing is going to maybe look like, but how do you think it fits together?
From a narrative point of view, I think it definitely sort of plays into Michigan State's hands, right? All the pressure's on Kansas. They're the number one team. Everyone expects them to be great. They're the one that has to answer all these questions about FBI investigations. I mean, they're the ones that have to deal with all that. Michigan State, no one expects them to do anything. 5-point underdogs. They have most of the people who are going to play major minutes have played in these games. They know what it's like. Kansas, very few people. I mean, your experienced guy is LaGerald Vick. I don't think he's just going to go Devontae Graham or Frank Mason. Maybe he does, but at some point, your third guard isn't going to turn into an All-American the next year.
Right.
That luck has got to run out eventually. I think it all comes down to the Lawson kid, though. Dietrich Lawson was a beast at Memphis. Spent a year sitting out. Now, apparently, he always shot threes. Now, apparently, he can make threes. Mm-hmm. And he can do just about everything else at the 4 position. That's going to be really tough for Michigan State, where I don't know what their answer is there.
Can you think of another instance of a transfer being like a major preseason player of the year candidate in a high major conference?
The kid at Kentucky is going to be pretty good this year too, Reed Travis.
Right. What about in the past?
Grad transfer. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm trying.
Like,
to think
that's kind of a crazy deal, right?
Past.
That a transfer at Kansas is maybe, or is at least being billed as the best player in the Big 12, possibly. How good is he? I don't know, because
I don't think it's possibly.
Memphis wasn't that good when he was there, and they played in. They were not playing Big 12 basketball. They were not playing, a monster conference schedule against the best teams in the country. Memphis doesn't, am I wrong? Like, how good is this guy?
You're not wrong. Everything you see says he's pretty good. The numbers all look pretty good on the Memphis team that wasn't that good, which is obviously a good sign. I think you can kind of see a sit-out year really being a benefit for some transfers.
Right.
Charles Matthews is a good example of that, right?
For sure.
If the hype is for real, he could be a problem. Because if you just you say that he's going to be slightly better than he was at Memphis, just doing it. He's also playing with a lot better players than he was at Memphis.
Good point.
He's not the only guy on the team.
Yep.
They got Azubuike down there. They have these 5-star guards coming in. They're not really short on talent. And if he's that good that they're going to still run everything through him, it's probably pretty good.
All right. So if you are Michigan State, give me your defensive matchups.
I would think I think Ward can have just a completely fine game against Udoka Azubuike. He's good, but I don't see Nick Ward struggling really there. That's the kind of guy you want to match up with. It's just a guy who wants to play like him, play on the block.
Right, he's more down low. He's not going to stretch him out. He's not going to take him away from the basket and kind of get him outside of his comfort zone, right?
No, he's going to try to bang right against him and go head-to-head, and I think Ward's probably the quicker player, honestly. He'll be fine in that. What can make Kansas tough is that apparently some of their best lineups I was reading are when they kind of spread the floor around Azubuike. They have Lawson at the 4, but he can play make. He can shoot. He was like 25% from 3 at Memphis. He's 6 of 8 from 3 in exhibition games. So that's a struggle. Then you probably have LaGerald Vick out there just gunning. And then you have to see. It looks like they're starting some of these other guards, like the transfer. I think Charlie Moore, sort of maybe the higher floor, lower ceiling guys. But eventually, it's going to be Quentin Grimes and Devon Dotson.
I would certainly think so. Yeah,
the go-to guys. And I think everything you read about Grimes is that he'll probably at the end of the year he's going to be the guy.
Right. I mean, he
don't know
played
what
for Self on the U18 team, right?
I think so.
Yeah. For all everything that I've seen points to him being a dude.
But you don't know how those guys are going to react first game of the year. Right?
For sure.
He's never played in a stage this big. Cassius Winston has. Cassius is not going to be as athletic or anything, but maybe he goes out and hits a bunch of threes. That's what they need. I just don't know. So you have Kenny Goins, I would assume, starting. Dedrick Lawson.
I think Kenny 100% starts.
And he's played in those matchups, but is he? I don't know if he can take Lawson out of the game, and that's sort of where it all starts. And then if he goes off the court, do you go small? Do you go big? I don't know enough about Lawson, but to see a guy as big as him that can shoot and have assist numbers, it's an intriguing combination for sure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a perfect game in terms of trying to look at Michigan State and figure them out in terms of lineups and personnel, because the 4 spot is one of my big curiosities for sure, because I do think that they might, in terms of maximizing their talent, I do think that you can make the case for, putting a guy like Aaron Henry at the 4 and just, you might be a little bit small or whatever, but what does that look like? He's as talented as anyone else that they could put there, so, why not? I don't like the idea of Tillman and Ward playing together. Kenny Goins, I think, is a perfectly serviceable 4-man that can give you 20 minutes a night. I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, if you're in a high-scoring game, he might not be your best option, whatever. But, this is a game where that spot has to probably be dictated by defense, right?
Yep. You have to figure out something to slow them down.
Right. So in this instance, game 1, you probably go with the experience and just play Kenny at the 4 and kind of roll with it and hope that he can just shut down his man there, give you, a couple points here and there, stay out of foul trouble, grab some boards, whatever. But this whole idea of Izzo going real big and playing Tillman and Ward together, if he does that against Kansas, I think it's a bad idea in this game. And I don't know how much of this is just kind of the Izzo likes to float things that may or may not be actually something that he's legitimately considering, right? Of course, this is another preseed that comes out. Hey, we might play some zone. We're looking zone, da-da-da. And I'm just... It's not... I don't see it happening. And if a big lineup like that is actually something he's considering for this year, I don't know how that'll look, but if he's considering it, does he roll it out in a game like this? We'll see.
One thing to consider, though, is Bill Self, deep down, wants to go big, too.
That's a good point.
Has always, last year was his most perimeter-oriented team in forever.
Wait, and that 4 dudes,
basically because he had to.
Yeah. He had no size, he had no depth. I mean, all he had was shooters.
They have other big men on this team, and they might just roll out and match with Michigan State. If they put Tillman out there at the 4, maybe Kansas puts another big guy out there to try to contain him. So that could honestly work in their favor as well. Because it's not like Bill Self is not a guy who's dying to spread the floor. He just has sort of stumbled upon it because of blind luck, as far as I can tell. And I think one of the biggest advantages for Michigan State in this game might be coaching. That seems to be where they've beaten Kansas teams that are probably better than them before in this tournament, and that could really help them, I think.
Yeah. I will be... Sorry, go ahead.
When you were talking about Aaron Henry playing, how much of the freshman class, I guess, would you really see getting involved in a game of this stakes? Do you think it's ride to the guys you've had, or do you think they try to give them a little taste?
I think it will be... Henry's going to play serious minutes. He will be absolutely a part of the rotation and will be counted on. And I'll tell you what, in the scrimmage, and I know it's nothing and it's against who cares, whatever, in your home gym, But when he got on that court on whatever that was, Thursday night, does that sound right? Yeah, we'll say Thursday night. So when he got out there, he did not look like the head was not spinning. The head was way more on a good swivel. He was in the game. He was not overwhelmed. Is my dog making noise over here? Let me take his collar
I
off.
can't hear him.
Okay. My man Otis, for you listeners, is going to be a major character probably in this podcast. But so Henry, I don't think this game will be a big stage, but I don't think he's going to be totally overwhelmed. And he's got the whole. He's an Indiana kid, right? Games in Indianapolis, there's that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for him? I don't know. We'll see. But the other freshmen, I don't know how much Gabe Brown. He might have an extraordinarily high ceiling. I think he does. But for a game like this, it might be a little bit much to put him in there and expect him to kind of be in the moment. Foster Loyer is my big question because I see, they played Matt McQuaid at the 1 a little bit in the exhibition, and I think it's because they need a option as a backup to Cassius just in case, right? If you put Foster Loyer out there in a reserve role in this game and he just gets blown by twice, you can't just play Cassius 40 and you can't just leave him out there, right? So I literally think how many minutes Foster Loyer plays in this game will be determined within the first 5 possessions. Because if Kansas gets the ball and just goes at him and it's blow by, that's it, right? That's his night. McQuaid's your backup 1, but you mainly just lean on Cassius and you play him 34 minutes. That'd be my. I don't see Thomas Kithier really getting major run, and I don't see Bingham playing at all.
Yeah, Lawyer's really the interesting one because I think they're going to need his shooting, his offense, but you just don't know. I think you kind of want to get him in there maybe at least for a couple shifts and see how that actually plays out. If people are taking advantage of him, and then, hey, this is what you need to get to. We need to be able to play you in these games. What do we have to do to make that happen? Whether it's scheme or whatever else to figure out a way. Whether it's going zone, who knows?
They're not going to play zone.
If you're going to play Cassius Winston and Foster Loyer at the same time, you might have to play zone.
And that might happen later in the year. It's not happening against Kansas in the first game of the year. They are not throwing a zone defense out there. There's no chance. And if I'm wrong, we'll come back next week and you can make fun of me and people can yell at me on
I'm not
Twitter
saying they're going to play zone now. I'm saying they might have to at some point if they have Winston and Loyer in the backcourt. It's tough defense. Do you worry more about Michigan State on offense or defense against Kansas?
Right now, I worry about them more on offense, just in this game.
Even though they gave up 100 points to Gonzaga in a scrimmage?
Yeah, and I mean, so the explanation that I got about that from a couple guys was it was just a foul fest, and I think both teams took over 30 free throw attempts. They did let up a lot of points, though. I mean, you're right, but Gonzaga's really good, really, really good. My preseason number 1, for what it's worth. But for this game, I'm more interested or curious or suspect of Michigan State's offense, because I've had this running theory that while it's not a matter of knocking Miles Bridges, but I think he was a difficult guy to kind of try to play through. He was a wing who wasn't a ball dominant player. He didn't really do much off the bounce, and he didn't really pass. He could pass, but he didn't really create anything for anyone else. And so much of the offense was steered in his direction that while efficiency-wise, they were really, really, really good. But it seems like, the games that they didn't play well, or if they played equal competition, the offense didn't, they would have these stretches where they just didn't look good and the ball would stick and it would kind of like their problems would just compound, over and over again. So now I'm curious to see what it looks like when Cassius Winston has to be the man here, and the ball needs to be in his hands, and he dictates everything. So what does that look like? I don't know.
Is Cassius Winston that ball dominant guy? I mean, he's been on the team the last 2 years and he hasn't become it. Like, for all Bridges' faults, he might not be a guy you can completely play through, but he's a great guy to play with. He makes everyone better, not by his passing always, but he's an outlet for a drive. You can throw it up for him for alley-oop. Mm-hmm. You can stay it out on the perimeter, and you can't play off of him. Basically, you lose the two most probably efficient cogs from that last year's offense in terms of Jaren Jackson and Bridges as finishers and floor spacers, and now you still don't really have a proven guy to run offense through. I think that you go and just throw the ball into Nick Ward all the time before you. I think that's what this is going to become, because that's the only way you can really collapse the defense.
No, I mean, Cassius Winston can get into the middle of a defense as well as damn near anyone you'll find. If he's getting into the middle and kicking out, are those guys hitting shots is the bigger question that I have. And
if he's kicking out, he is the guy who shot 50%.
I was going to say that
last year, and he's the guy you want to shoot the ball.
He's the best shooter on the team, and that's going to be kind of the biggest question with Cassius is how does he balance that? Because you can make a case that he should, in an ideal world, he might lead this team in field goal attempts, and also in an ideal world, he might lead the country in assists. But I don't think both of those things can happen.
And he's wired to do the second one. He's never been wired to be a guy who's going to take. He's not going into a game saying, I'm taking 15 shots.
Right.
I'm going to pound the ball. And that's sort of the thing.
And there's no chance that he shoots 52% on threes again. That's not a knock on him. It's just not going to happen.
That's fine.
Am I
just
crazy?
Fascinating. You have Nick Ward. No, it's not. You have Nick Ward. You have Cassius Winston. If you just go by tempo free or per 40 stats, they're Hall of Famers. They were insane numbers last year, and they both played 20-something minutes. There was a reason last year because that team was loaded. Now they have to be able to maintain that efficiency while playing 50% more minutes, more important role, without sort of the crutches of the guys who were playing that heavy load last year.
Right. But then, so you were talking about the offense defense. What's the bigger question? I know you and I have talked about this. How many guys can just go get buckets? Like, how many guys can create their own stuff? Because Josh Langford, for as talented as he is, he is as curious as anyone. As for a junior, like, I think he is, as of all the guys I've covered and been around, for a guy going into his junior year, or someone who I'm just like, I can't figure this guy out, like, that's Josh Langford. This is I don't want to say make or break, because, I mean, that's just hyperbole, but is he going to be as good as people thought he was going to be? Well, you know what? Like, this is a guy you're going to find out on Tuesday if he's ready to kind of be a big-time player, right?
So what do you think how do you think his game changes do you think he has a different role this year, or is it sort of the same thing?
The number one thing has to be better shots. Whether it is in transition, whether it is in the half court, his looks need to be of higher value. I know, I mean, I don't know if you know the numbers off the top of your head, but like the number of 18-foot jumpers that he took last year was extraordinary, and it's just a low-value shot.
He shoots 40% from three, but he shoots 40% in mid-range twos, but he shoots about an equal number of both. That's not really going to work out for you when you're shooting the same percentage on a shot that's worth 50% less.
Right.
And what I go back and forth on is if he is passing up threes to take those mid-range shots, or if it's because he can't get all the way to the rim, and so he settles for those in situations where he might not have had a three, but he can't get to the basket because he's not really wired to get to the basket.
So you're saying when he gives that pump fake and then goes one dribble in, he could just keep going, right? But most of the time in his career, he has just pulled up and put up a 17-footer.
Yeah. Get to the rim, get fouled.
Right.
Shoot a three or get to the rim. He settles for that middle part. Because there's a time and place for Michigan State runs a lot of offense off screens, and there's a curling jumper from the elbow. That's a good shot, even if it's not the highest value shot. But it's those one dribble pull-ups that are really the ones he cuts out, and that's because he needs to take 3 dribbles and go to the basket, not one dribble and shoot an 18-footer. Mm-hmm. I think if he can just do that.
His freshman year, I thought it was because he was injured, and last year I didn't really have a perfect answer for it. But he's also a guy who, from my view, it seems like a lot of the stuff that does get drawn up for him in terms of running him off screens and stuff and putting him in spots where he can just catch and shoot, that is just, for so many times in his career, it just seems like he's like a half second slow to get there. And that he's a little bit slow, and the pass, the ball isn't kind of popping around the perimeter, and then it's just hitting him, and the guy, whoever his defender is still, trying to get around a screen, and he just has a clean and easy look. It just seems like he's always been a half second slow. The guy has time to recover, and then that's when he gets into these take a contested three or go one dribble, bad 18-foot shot. Like, that's when he gets into those spots. So when I talked to him this summer, he's like, I'm going to get in the best shape in my life. I'm going to be as fast and athletic as I've ever been. And I have no reason to question that. But, now it's time to see it, because I've never heard anyone on the staff say it, but, that seems to me like something that's kind of always been an underlying thing for him.
Well, he's going to have every opportunity to show if it's true.
That's right. All right, we're at 27 minutes, Dylan. I think we got to switch over to Michigan.
All right, let's do it.
Does that sound right to you? All right.
Sounds good.
So obviously Michigan's playing a game no one cares about on Tuesday. Norfolk State will be whatever. So I think we're probably better off talking more about kind of this, what you've seen, what you saw in the scrimmage. We were both there at Chrysler on Friday. You were there. I was there. Chris Webber was not there. But the game itself showed a number of things. I did think that it did kind of reveal some interesting tidbits. So let's talk about that, and then kind of the season as a whole, kind of big picture view. So what were give me your hot takes, if any, on what we saw on Friday?
My hot take is that any questions about the offense are still valid questions. I don't know. I have a Michigan team under Beeline that just couldn't shoot like this team. Mm-hmm. It's not even that they can't shoot; it's that they don't want to shoot.
Like, no one's natural instinct is to take jumpers.
There's Michigan teams that had a lot of guys that didn't really shoot well, but they would still shoot. Think of like some of those teams with Zach Irvin where he was shooting it all the time, but he wasn't as the most locked in. But they're a volume shooter by definition, right? This team, you have starters who shoot less than 30% from three. You have a freshman who's coming in who already got a spot in the starting lineup in Ignas Brazdeikis, and he didn't shoot a three in Europe and didn't make a three in the first game. I don't know. I think the biggest question and sort of determine their ceiling is whether Jordan Poole can be that guy who shoots 6 threes a game and makes 40% of them, because I think they need that, and I don't know where else they're getting that floor spacing from.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it happening. I just think that this is going to be a team where the best part of John Beilein's coaching, in my opinion, is that if he doesn't have guys who are going to shoot, then they're not going to draw up stuff for shots that these guys don't want to take and can't make.
But we've never seen that. He's never done that.
Okay, well, no one saw him play, no one saw the 1-3-1 at West Virginia before he realized that he didn't have the athletes to guard in the Big East. So he said, we're going to play this, bullshit defense and try to confuse people. Like he's going to just go with what he has. So the offense, I think, is just going to be downhill all day, going to the basket. We were talking the other night. Do you remember the numbers on record for free throw attempts for a season or whatever? Did you say it was last year?
Last year's team got to the free throw line. They had a higher free throw rate than any of Beilein's previous teams of Michigan. And this team, I would think, would shatter that record because
I don't even think it's going to be close.
A guy like Duncan and with Iggy, that's enough to flip 5 percentage points easy on that number.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, they shot, like 65, 66% last year from the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were terrible. But point being, I think this year, I think they could be attempting 4, 5, 6, 7 more free throws a game. Now that might be a bit much of whatever, but you get my point. Like, I just think they're going to be attacking at the basket all year long. I'm not saying they're not going to shoot threes, but what would you guess is their average under Beilein attempts per game, like in his tenure?
I would just go on 3-point rate, which is attempts over,
right,
or 3-point attempts over field goal attempts, and it's every year they've been over 40% under Beilein at Michigan, except for the 2013 team, and that was the team that went to the Final Four,
right,
and had Mitch inside and stuff like that.
But that team still had a lot of shooters.
Yeah, Glenn didn't shoot a ton. So you had 2 front court guys. You had a center who didn't shoot any threes because it was either Jordan or Mitch.
Yeah.
And then you had Glenn, who was probably more of a 25% of his shot attempts were threes.
Yeah.
Then Nick was all threes, and then Trey and Tim were a little more balanced. They could slash a little bit, but that was really the one team that didn't shoot over 40% of its shot from three. And I can't see this team getting there, but it's only happened one time, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, Charles, I would put him he will take 30%, 40, maybe, tops 40%. I would say closer to 30. I would say 25 for Xavier. Jordan will be over 50, maybe. But that's it.
So
that's it, man. And John Teskey will probably take 1 or 2 a game, but I don't know where else it's coming. Isaiah Livers will sit in the corner and he'll get, 2 looks a game. But I think it is going to just be off the bounce, creating stuff going at the tin. And the bigger question that I have is after a month of them playing the way that I think they're going to only be equipped to play is how do they get defended? Because they're going to be once teams see what they are, that's going to be a major problem. Is that I don't think it's going to be very difficult to defend this team, which flies in the face of pretty much everything we know about watching Michigan basketball under John Beilein, right?
Yep. What was the first thing you said about any Michigan team over the last decade? 4 shooters on the floor, impossible to defend. It's a lot easier to prepare for a team that can't shoot. You just put everyone in the paint and say, beat
right.
me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I collapse on them right now. I just squeeze it in, suck the life out of the paint, and I beg them to shoot 28 threes.
You go under every ball screen.
Yep.
You don't have to switch anymore because Mo is gone, so you can just go under, not worry about getting beat with jumpers over the top. I think you need something to make that offense a little more dynamic, and we're gonna have to see what it is. I'm not sure. You also don't really want to bet against John Beeline coaching offense either. That's not gonna win you money very often.
Right, and I mean, and at the same time, this team's going to win games with its defense. So we can sit here and talk about offense all day, but at some point, whoever they're playing still has to figure out a way to score 70 points, and I don't think that's going to happen that often.
Nope, we're going to see a lot of rock fights.
Yes,
going to see, and it's going to be like the tournament run last year. Just grind it out. Neither team can score. Completely take the other team out of their offense, and then see what happens on the back end.
All right, so let's talk a little bit personnel, though. Because there's known commodities in a lot of spots, but Eli Brooks, Brandon Johns, Austin Davis are very difficult to peg, I think, in terms of what they're going to be this year. Eli, we're talking about shooting. If Eli Brooks can be a guy who can prove that he can make shots at the 2, I think he can get some minutes at that spot. And it looks like that staff is trying to give him every opportunity to prove that he can do that. He ran mostly at the 2 the other night. Is that right?
He was the first guard off the bench. They basically went through the whole rotation and got back to the starters with only him playing at the 1 or 2. Well, I guess Iggy played a little at the 2, but they didn't go to DeJulius, right? So
yeah.
Brooks can back up the 1 or the 2, and I thought he looked pretty good. He's sort of been a guy they've been hyping since this time last year, and threw him in the starting lineup. Never really got it done. I don't know if I think it all comes down to if he can show that confidence in a game, an actual live situation, and then maybe he builds something from that. But they need someone to come off the bench and make those shots, and he looks a lot closer to doing that than DeJulius does to me right now.
What do you like about his game after seeing him
He made the first 3 of the exhibition game, so that helps. You need something to make a 3, and I think his handle's getting a little better. I never really bought him completely as a point guard. He's sort of someone you can build into maybe a Muhammad Ali type of guy, right?
Yeah.
Just be solid. Just play both spots, know the offense, move the ball, hit open shots. They don't really have sort of that glue rotational guy in their rotation. Jordan Poole and Iggy Brazdeikis, they're not just glue, be the next guy. They're the guy, whether they're both on the floor or not.
Right.
So with Eli, you sort of have some balance. You can put him next to X, and then he can space the floor a little bit. It'll be interesting. I don't really know. Kind of a wait to see it to believe it, right? I mean, he looked good against Northwood, but they all look good against Northwood.
My sense with Eli Brooks is that he's a guy who you need to just say, you're doing this. Okay, so last year when he's at the 1 and everything good that he did, which there was a lot early in November, it just seemed like him playing. I don't know how much of what he did was really in the offense. And then from there on out, he just kind of got lost mentally, and he's the first one to admit it. He was in his own head. He didn't really know which way he was going. And so for this year, just in my experience dealing with guys who go from that freshman to sophomore year where they kind of get overloaded as freshmen, like going into second year, I don't think it's a good idea to say you're kind of the 1, you're kind of the 2, because that's when they start swimming again in their head. I think coming into this year, it needs to be, you need to be the best backup 2 that we have. Force the hand that Iggy doesn't get any minutes at the 2 because you're a really good backup 2. And then obviously that puts DeJulius playing backup minutes at the 1. Now, whether he's prepared to do that is a completely different conversation. But I think in terms of Eli Brooks getting his confidence back, I think he needs to know what he is. And asking him to
I
do
just
the
think
two different positions, I don't know if that... Now, don't get me wrong, in December, January, right, if he starts really playing well, maybe you can kind of do that. But right now, I think he needs to have a singular goal and a singular vision of what his job is.
if he's only playing one position this year to start the year, it's got to be point guard. I don't.
So you're not buying on
They're not going to
DeJulius.
put Dave DeJulius on the court at Villanova in 2 weeks.
Xavier Simpson also is going to play 35 minutes a game. I can tell you that right now.
What about if he gets 2 hand checks in the first 5 minutes?
Well,
There's
fair.
no way that they're going to roll DeJulius out and play the last 15 minutes to that happen.
Yeah.
I think Beeline has proven more than anyone he's going to ride with guys who have been in the system. Almost to a detriment some years where they had guys who ended up needing to play later but never really got a chance in November. So I think he's going to stick with Eli and he's going to stick with Austin off the bench because they know what's going on. And until he can really see something to do otherwise, I don't know that he will.
He might do that out of necessity. That's fine. I don't know how well Eli Brooks will perform in that scenario, though. If he's playing both, I don't know how well he will perform in that scenario.
Feels like to me, if Eli hits 3 of his first 5 threes of the season, he's off and running and he's back up. If he goes 0 for 6, all of a sudden you're searching for answers. You're thinking he's never. I just think of Beeline in that mic'd up segment at Ohio State last year. He was just saying, I can't get him a better look than that. And Eli just missed it completely. And I just think he just needs to get that confidence. He knows what he needs to do.
Sure.
Everyone knows what he needs to do. And I think they're trying to coax that out of him. They know what he can be. He was a guy that got offered by both teams in the national championship last year. Everyone wants him to be good. They think he has it. It's just he needs to show it.
Right. And for what it's worth, before we move on to Brandon Johns, talking to Eli Brooks for a while at Media Day, he's more comfortable in the 2 spot. Just hunting shots. Like he said that's a more natural feel for him. So I don't know. That's just a point for people to consider. So Brandon Johns, I think, might be the most interesting player on the team. You could maybe make that argument because he's a guy just on his raw materials, his physical gifts, his talent could be, just a completely not game changing. That's that's kind of overspeak, but he's a guy who could really just make this a different team. Like if Brandon Johns is a guy who's ready to be what Brandon Johns can be, that could be the difference between is this a first weekend team or is this a second weekend team? Because I personally think he's best at the 5 at this year. But can he play the 5? I have no idea. Your thoughts?
He's gonna play. The goal of the assistant coaching staff over the next 3 months should be do everything you can in all the hours you have to get Brandon Johns ready to play the 5 by February or March. You don't need him now, but you're gonna need another offensive wrinkle, and you get that by playing him at the 5. Everything we've seen is that he's trying to play the 5. That's where they played him first on Friday. That was
played him in Spain at the 5.
He also doesn't look remotely ready to play the 5 in a high major game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're going to put Austin Davis out there again next week or 2 weeks from now in Philadelphia because he at least has been in a game. Johns looks to me like he's trying to figure everything out as he's going, sort of stuck in cement, just trying to make a decision. He has the ability, and having someone with that ability could change the offense. They could go to a small lineup, pick and pop, spread the floor. He can drive on guys. I think the question becomes, how long do you try to do that before you try to do that with Isaiah Livers? Because
that's a great point.
They want Livers to learn the 3, back up the 3 also. But at the end of the day, if Johns isn't ready to play in December, you have to start thinking about playing that same way with Livers at the 5 instead.
Yeah. And defensively, Livers is a guy who can pick that up, I think, probably fairly quickly. Luke Yaklich, when we were in Spain, mentioned that I found this really interesting. Like, his two communicators kind of on the court, like the guys that he talks to then translate everything to everyone else on the court, is Xavier and Isaiah Livers. So, I took that as, I was like, damn, that's a big compliment, and that is something where, okay, minutes are going to be allocated for someone who can do that, right? So if they force their hand, or if Iggy Brasdeikis forces their hand and he has to play the 4, right, which we probably both agree is going to happen because they need offense. Okay, well then at the 5 spot, if Livers is that guy, that he's very reliable, I think they feel comfortable with him on the floor. If you're going to go super small, do you slide him to the 5? That's a really interesting point. The problem with it is, like, Brandon John's talent-wise, the talent that's there is at an extremely high level. And how can you figure out a way to capitalize on that right now? Like, whatever you can get out of it before you actually make him a major rotation piece, you got to get something out of him now because he's really good.
Yeah, I think that even if you're playing Johns at the 5 on offense, I think you're always going to put Livers on the floor next to him as sort of a crutch, because I think Livers would have to handle a lot of that defensive ability at the same time, even if Johns was playing the 5 on offense.
Yeah, you can't play Brasdeikis and Johns at the 4 and 5.
That's just a disaster. But it's just not going to work at this point. I don't know if you get enough offense from Livers at the 5 to justify going small. And I don't know if I think that there's a higher offensive ceiling with Johns, which is why it makes a little more sense. But I think he might be a little more pure as a pick and pop guy, as a driver. Livers looked really good to me on Friday, but he also looked really good because he's running the floor, roaming everywhere, and defense looked great, but he's still not doing anything in the half court.
Is the spacing, though, that Livers would afford you? Like, if he was at the 5, teams would at least have to, you can't sag on it because he can hit it, so
it's worth a try for sure.
Yeah.
But he hit almost all of his threes in a 2-week span last year, so I think jury's still kind of out whether what kind of shooter he is this year.
Okay, and then the last one was, real quick before we get to the Big Ten, Austin Davis. I don't see Colin Castleton being ready to go at the 5 anytime soon. So Austin Davis is going to get a shot here, and I kind of just view him as, I absolutely hate this expression, but it's pretty fitting here. Like, is what he is, I don't see him making any great jump. I see him as he's basically Jordan Morgan. He can set a screen and drop and catch the ball and convert. And on defense, he takes up space and can give you a physical presence, which is good. But I'm not sure what else there is beyond that.
My 2 things on Austin, he looked better Friday catching and finish. He had a great catch and finish on the ball screen that Teskey pretty much botched every ball screen catch and finish he had on Friday. So Davis is a lot more comfortable like that. I just don't know that he can stay on the court without fouling.
Right.
He got a foul boxing out for a rebound. He's getting fouls where they're calling the foul before he even touches the guy just because of his angle and his approach, and he just needs to fix those things before he can be really counted on. Or he's going to have a lot of 5-foul, 6-minute games. And that's sort of been the thing for him all along, I think.
And I don't know, okay, if he is that, if he gives you 8 minutes a game and play some decent defense, and it doesn't hurt you, doesn't kill you, it's fine. But any thoughts of him being, the real big country? I don't dominating the game, dominating the games physically on the blocks, ripping down every rebound, being able to be a guy who can finish over people. I don't know if that's going to happen. He does have good hands, but at least them having an option of a guy who can at least set a high screen, drop, catch the ball, and make an open dunk Like, there's been times in Michigan history under John where they didn't have that, right? Where a guy just couldn't catch the ball. So at least having a guy who can do that, there's worse options.
And you're going to see a lot more of that because teams aren't going to switch everything. So ball screens will become more traditional, which will give guys like Charles and X better chance to throw lobs up to the bigs to look for those passes that just weren't always there last year when Mo was on the court.
Yeah.
So that will be more important, sort of like you've seen in previous years.
Okay. So do you have... How do we want to do this? Do you want to just give some power rankings out? Do you want to give Michigan State season predictions? What do you...
season predictions? We could do that. We could do... I don't have a whole power ranking ready to go.
Okay.
I figured we could go through some Big Ten stuff, like who we think is going to win the league. I guess we could do where Michigan State will finish, or
rock and roll.
how they'll finish, like that. And then I figure we could say if there's any important games this week. The only Big Ten game I saw that's any good was Ohio State at Cincinnati. We can
love that game is coming back. By the way,
we can it's opening their Renault Arena too, I think. We can mention that Penn State beat West Virginia in exhibition, which is a big one.
Is West Virginia's preseason top 25, right?
Yeah, they're like good.
Like 20th, they're around the 20 range, I would think. But it's West Virginia. I mean, West Virginia's legit, man.
That's a good win.
That's a good win.
And then Mike Watkins wasn't even playing, but we don't know if he's ever going to play.
I picked Penn State 11th in my preseason poll, and that might have been the one that I was most uneasy about. That just seemed really low for a team that, yes, they lose some guys, but Tony Carr took a lot of shots. Like, he was kind of a drain at times on the offense, where you're just like, there's other guys out there who can play ball a little bit. Like, that wasn't a team. Their level of talent was not befitting a guy who needed to take 25 shots a game. And
Tony Carr is a great addition by subtraction guy.
Yes, I would agree. So, and they won the NIT, and I'm not feeling my 11th place prediction for them. So we'll see, because I'm usually high on Penn State. They're coached by a Philly guy.
It's your homeland.
They're coached by a Philly guy, so they get the automatic benefit of the doubt. Okay, so looking at the league, who wins? Who wins the conference this year?
I've got Indiana. I just think that
it's a big buy-in.
They figured out the defense in the second half of last year. Romeo Langford's going to be the best freshman in the league. They have a experienced guy in the middle who can play as efficient. I'm not buying that he's going to be an all Big Ten first team guy like a lot of Indiana people are, but he's a really good second best player. And then they have a lot of talented kids around it. I just don't know about the point guard. They played their exhibition game, and the freshman Rob Finesse, I don't know how to say his name. He got the start, and Devontae Graham was out with an injury. So that is something to watch, and I don't really trust either of their point guards, but you have enough talent around them, they'll be good.
Yeah, I do think they have, just in terms of actual talent, as much, if not, well, I wouldn't say more, but they basically have as much pure talent probably as anyone in the league. How that actually plays out, I'm not really sure. I picked them second in the league, and I am not confident in that at all. And like when you say that they figured out the defense at the end of the year, that might be a little bit generous.
They were probably a top 20 defense after New Year's in adjusted efficiency.
Well, then
that's good.
They shouldn't have lost to Rutgers in the Big Ten tournament then.
Well, they lost to Rutgers because they had no offense.
I'm just saying they gave up. They did give up 76 points to Rutgers in the Big Ten tournament. So
that was a magical run for the Scarlet Knights.
But I agree. The point guard question is the big one. The defense question is the big one. But I do like their makeup, and I do think Archie can coach a little bit. And I do like that they get 10 home league games on the best home court in the conference. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're a good pick to be a top 4 finisher in the conference. And the real question is, are they real? Like, can they go win this thing? That I have no idea. But I do also like the idea of us throwing some shade on Indiana in every podcast that we record so that they listen to it down there, pump up the numbers, create some controversy. This is a good...
That's a smart business right there.
It's a good plan. So,
what is your opinion on Archie Miller as a close follower of the A10? What was his kind of reputation in that league?
Me personally, I was never overly impressed by him, and I thought Dayton was a job, or is a job, that, like, yes, you should win there. And I think he actually should have won a little bit more there, maybe. But, you know, I don't think they were ever higher than... I think their highest seed in the NCAA tournament when he was there was like a 7. But I mean, he made the tournament, I think, 4 straight years, and they were good.
And obviously made.
Like they're legit, man. They were legit. He was legit at Dayton. But I think that's a great job, and he might have benefited from a few down years in the conference. But because the years that Dayton, my big question often with Archie was some of his big years at Dayton coincided with some really crappy years in the A10. And so I was always like, how good is this? You know what I mean? Like, how good is this program? How good is this team? Because the conference is really, really down. So, you know.
I've got good news for Archie.
What's that?
Here in the Big Ten.
The Big Ten is down. That's a good point. So, that was a good hire. And I liked what I saw from Indiana last year. You know, like, the job didn't seem too big for him, if that makes sense.
It did at first when he lost to 2 in-state schools at home before New Year's. But if you plug your nose, you can convince yourself there's a lot to like with their resume.
You know, but at like the press conferences, it's like, you know, he didn't react viscerally. He didn't shut things down. He didn't overreact, right? Like he just kind of just kept rolling with it. I feel like he, you know, quote unquote, he trusted his process, whatever, but.
Oh, jeez.
We should probably end this on that. But, all right. I'm taking Michigan State to win the Big Ten this year.
On what basis?
I'm buying hard on Cassius Winston being really, really good. I do think that I'm not thoroughly impressed by the Big Ten. And I'll take Winston, Langford, Ward, McQuaid, and Izzo coaching and then playing 10 home games in a league that I don't think is going to be the winning team in the conference goes 16-4 or 17-3, right? I don't think this is going to be a year like that. I think it's going to be really bunched up and, you know, maybe 13-7 or 14-6 wins the league via a few tiebreakers, okay? I'll put Michigan State in one of those spots and I'll say they win it. I just think it's a good, safe bet.
The thing with Michigan State you have to think about is, so they're going to be worse than they were last year, almost by definition. They lose 2 pros. There's a lot of teams in the league that are going to be better than they were last year.
True.
At least you can make a case, right? Indiana, Wisconsin, teams like that. So with Michigan, I think Michigan and Michigan State, I kind of see the same way. They're both going to be, at first, it seems like on paper, worse teams than they were last year. So it's just how much is the rest of the league going to elevate up, and if they're going to be competitive in that sense. That's kind of, it's just you have to sort of weigh the up and down of the movement, and it might, just like you say, result in a bunch of teams who are win 60% of their Big Ten games, and you have a big mess at the top.
So that's how I that is 100% how I see that this league will be a lot of 11 and 12 win teams. And my biggest question is going to be what the hell the committee will do with that, right? Like, I think it's extraordinarily important for the Big Ten to have a very strong non-conference showing. Teams need to win games, because if these teams don't win games and then they go and all just trade punches basically for 2.5 months and they all finish 10-10, 11-9, 12-8, right? And no one has done anything. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play out bid wise, right? Like, you could have that. There's an easy way for this league to not have like any team that's a 5 seed or higher. Like that, I think that is very, very possible.
So if you look at KenPom, they have basically all but 4 teams in the league. No, 3 teams in the league are predicted somewhere between 12-8 and 9-11.
Mm-hmm.
So basically everyone is in that range except for Illinois, Rutgers, and Michigan State. And Michigan State's only projected at 13-7. So they're right there too, really. And if they don't, a league that gravitates around 500 either gets a ton of bids or no bids. It comes down to the challenges. It comes down to these preseason tournaments. It comes down to whether a team like Nebraska can actually win some of these games that they actually scheduled after making a big fuss last year. But it also could just be a league where no one's any good. Everyone's in that 20 to 40 range. It can easily become 40 to 60, and then
you're spot on. Like, Nebraska's the perfect example, right? Because I think they've got like Seton Hall, they've got Creighton. I think they're on the road at Clemson. Is that right, in the ACC, Big Ten?
Clemson. I think they play Oklahoma State.
I think that Clemson game's on the road, but like that's like the definition of a game that the league needs, right? You need a team like Nebraska to go get that win at Clemson. They need to beat Seton Hall at, I think that's a home game. Mm-hmm. Those are games you got to have if you're the Big Ten this year.
If you don't, it's really, if your 500 teams can't beat 500 teams in other leagues, you're sunk.
You're screwed, right?
That'll be basically the situation and then that's the only way we're going to be able to tell whether some of these teams are legit or they're not headed into the year, because they're all so close. You don't really, there's so much moving pieces, and it's really hard to pick someone out of the barrel. And I think that's why everyone just picked Michigan State and Michigan as their top 2 in the Big Ten, because they're the safe picks. They were the 2 best teams last year. They have 2 of the best coaches, and that's that.
Like, I would put this at probably a 6-bid league this year, is my general feeling as of November 4th. So Michigan State, Indiana, Nebraska, Michigan, I like Wisconsin being a top 5 team in the league. And then that 6th spot, pull a name out of a hat, whatever. Purdue, Minnesota. I'm way down. I'm not buying Purdue nearly as much as everyone else. So, that 6th spot in the league, I'll take. They let me down every year, so I'm just going to keep on going back to it. But, I just think Minnesota has talent, not coaching. But you can't tell me when you just put them down on paper. Reggie Lynch and Amir Coffey. Like, there are not that many teams that have 2 guys that are that good.
Jordan Murphy.
Jesus, sorry. Not Reggie Lynch.
The problem with Minnesota is I don't know they have a point guard. I haven't heard if the
you don't like a point guard who doesn't pass.
I mean, Jelly Fam can give buckets, but Rick Pitino gave an interview just ripping the fact that Jelly Fam was going to be Minnesota's point guard, which is a little ridiculous in a number of reasons. But if they get the transfer point guard, I think it's Marcus Carr.
Yeah.
I think his eligibility is still up in the air, which is a little ridiculous because the season starts on Tuesday. But that could help him a little bit. I don't see it. But I didn't see it the year they won 13 games or whatever it was a couple years back. So maybe I'm just missing it.
And I do think, like, Amir Coffey, I think, could very easily be this year's Keita Bates-Diop. Maybe not to that level. Maybe not player of the year, you know what I mean? But someone who everyone has completely forgotten about and who has NBA talent in all facets of the game. And no one talks about him.
There's not a lot of
anymore.
pros in the league,
right?
And everyone forgot about him after last year. So that's possible. I'm really fascinated by Iowa.
They also have Eric Curry back too. So
he's hurt again.
Oh, well, there you go. Gee, that's not good.
He got another knee injury. He's out for a couple months, I think.
Surgery?
I'm not sure. It might be like I think it was like a minor surgery.
That's not good. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I'm really fascinated by Iowa. They have the best offense in the league just about coming back, but they just played no defense. They played defense like Rutgers plays offense. And if they can just be functional on defense, they could surprise everyone. And they're playing probably in a hot seat situation where they need to win games, so that'll be really interesting.
They're definitely a really good sleeper pick. Like, if you wanted to throw some money down on a very random team that could just come out of absolutely nowhere and give you great value, like Iowa has the pieces to I could see them being the team at the end of the year. You're like, man, it made a lot of sense. Like, why did we overlook what they have
for sure
coming back? You know, you just play an ounce of defense and they win a couple. What did they end up winning last year?
They went 14-9 on the year and 4-14 in the Big Ten.
Jesus Mary, yeah.
They lost 6 of their last 7 games.
But with what?
All
right, so Bohannon. Oh, tell me if any of these guys are injured.
They bring everyone back.
Bohannon, Tyler Cook, right? Isaiah Moss, Luka Garza, and the guy that I really like at Iowa is Misha Daly.
He's good, and then
he's
they have
pretty
a freshman
good.
coming in. They have a freshman wing coming in who's like the all-time leading scorer in the state of Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
I think his name is Wieskamp. He started their exhibition. That's a loaded. In terms of pure offensive talent, they're ahead of most of the league. I've never seen a team that just completely tanks the whole season and plays no defense and no one transfers.
That's a good point.
Seemed like a team that quit and they didn't quit. So I don't know what that will result in this year, but they have the talent.
They do. That Daly kid, like when I saw him at times last year, he reminded me as a guy who could kind of have a like Scotty Lindsey type out of nowhere year as a very high level shooter. The biggest question mark in the league, I think, of all when we ran that media ballot on the Athletic and Adam Jardy at the Columbus Dispatch, the team that I think had the greatest disparities in where they were picked is Maryland. They were as high as 4th. They were as low as 11th. And you're talking about a team that has averaged like 13 wins or 12 wins a year or something like that in the Big Ten since joining the conference. And no one seems to have any idea because you got Cowan and you got Fernando, and those are 2 potential studs. But it's a lot of question marks beyond that.
I've never been impressed by Fernando. I think he's sort of a hollow numbers guy, blocks a lot of shots, isn't a good defender.
Mm-hmm.
The key for them, I think, will be if Morcell can actually make shots. He's super high motor as a guard, but he's 6'4" and just couldn't shoot threes last year. Cowan's really good, but that team last year wasn't the same without Herter, and you take him out of the mix. It's just they have good freshmen coming in, but I think they're more of the super springy athletic types, which can be hard to make an impact right away, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like your chiseled, scoring, refined player. It's a guy who can jump out of the gym and will be a pro at some point, but it's hard to get the most out of him. But Turgeon seems to always be, everyone just ignores him, acts like he doesn't ever get the job done, but he's won a lot of games there quietly.
Yep.
No one seems to. I don't know if Maryland fans even want to win Big Ten games. They just wish they could win ACC games. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of that.
I picked them 10th, and it was mainly because I'm not very high. I've never been really high on Cowan. And very low key possibility that is easily forgotten. There's more FBI trials coming. There's more stuff coming. I just feel like that is a team that is, there's gonna be more stuff that comes out on Maryland in all this stuff.
You don't say. You don't mean to say that the Guardian and one of the players on their team took a bribe from a Maryland booster?
You say it, I'm just.
I didn't say it. That trial said it.
There's a lot of stuff going on at that school, in that program. I do not see them emerging as a team that is going to be highly, highly focused that at the level it's going to take to be a conference contender this year. I see this being a season that easily unravels. This is like one of those, I've seen this story before,
Yeah, I don't even know if the FBI trial is enough to make noise there, though, right now. So
this is true.
They might be happy playing out of the spotlight.
That's a fair point. What do you make of Ohio State?
No idea. I think that they're just... They have some pieces. They have Caleb Wesson was good. C.J. Jackson was good. C.J. Jackson improved more than I really thought he could. But that whole team was Bates Diop, and I don't know what
Tate.
You can do.
And Tate. Tate was a monster.
Yeah, Tate was good.
He gave them a lot. He gave them a lot. I'm not saying he was the best player in the league, but he gave them a lot.
They have a good freshman class. I think that Holtman has exceeded expectations there, and his first year is really gravy, and he has good recruiting classes coming in. So I think this year's sort of a gap year where he sort of builds his new core, and then next year is where they are back in the top half of the league.
Yeah, I think for them to have a year where they really, or where they're contenders this season, I think like they're going to need someone to really come out of not nowhere, but like someone to take a major step that maybe guys like you or me are just completely not, like a guy like Musa Jallo, something like that just like comes out of nowhere, right? And is like, oh, geez, he's a second team all league player, that it's just the pieces that they have though on paper, unless the Woods kid, right? He transferred from Wake Forest.
And he's supposed to be good. Another guy is Luther Muhammad, the freshman. If he has a all Big Ten type of season as a freshman, that could really sort of put the pieces together.
But I just look at their roster and I don't see it as, okay, this is a team that is, can finish 6th or 5th or something like that. Like one of those guys is going to have to be something that I completely am overlooking to be, I think, that good.
Are you buying Wisconsin?
Yes.
Injury riddled last year.
Yes, I am.
But are they? What's the reasoning?
I like that they have a lot of pieces back. I really like Brad Davidson. And I think I wrote it in the one snippet that I had when I picked Wisconsin, I think like 4th in the league or something like that. Like when you show me this league this year, okay, I'll take Ethan Happ, Brad Davidson, and Khalil Iverson, and I'll put them out and battle for a top 5 finish in the league. I think they bring back like over 90% of all their stuff. They weren't that great last year, but they were decent. They showed that they could have been better if they were healthy. And, I'm not, some people are making it sound like Brad Davidson's about to be like an All-American, which is completely ridiculous. But, he's pretty good. But this team, they got an attitude to him. And the other thing is like, Ethan Happ is a guy who I can't see his career ending with a sputter. Like he's been pretty damn good for 3 years, and I think as a senior he's going to make damn sure that they fulfill a level of promise and potential. I
think it comes down to this is sort of a make or break year for what Greg Gard's going to be as a head coach.
Right. I mean, 'cause you're losing Hap. Yeah. So if they go 9-11 this year and then they lose Hap, it's like, okay, Greg Gard. I'm not sure what you're really.
It's just sort of been holding on and then slipping, and you're not going to. What are you going to do to build it back up?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to make of him really as a head coach right now in terms of. This will really tell us a lot, I think. Last year, I don't think it was necessarily his fault. I think they had a lot of bad breaks, obviously, along the way. But I'm also not sure if I'm buying on him. Like, if Bo Ryan was coaching this roster, I think we might look at it differently.
Sure.
If Bo Ryan was coaching last year's roster, we might have still looked at it differently.
They might have made their 20th straight NCAA tournament. Or 21st, whatever they were. Yeah.
That's what he does. So I don't know. That's a really interesting team, and I could kind of see it going either way. You can really make a case for any of these teams, though. Penn State beat West Virginia in a scrimmage. Lamar Stevens all of a sudden looks like a stud. They have a freshman guard coming in who apparently can make some shots. And Tony Carr is not going to chuck 30 shots a game, so maybe they'll be good. I mean, you can make a case for anyone.
Or Shep Gardner. And that's twice that we mentioned Tony Carr without saying that they also lose Shep Gardner. Sorry. I got distracted here for a second. That's a lot. That's a lot out of the backcourt. So it's pretty hard to predict Penn State being that great. Do we care to talk about Illinois or Northwestern or our friends at Rutgers?
Illinois loses a bunch of 25% three-point shooters, and that can really only be a good thing.
Good point.
So it's hard. Anyone can come in and shoot that, but they just have no size inside, and that probably will doom them. But I still will say that the Brett Underwood's Oklahoma State team was one of the most impressive offensive teams I think I've ever seen in person. So I'm not going to completely give up on him at Illinois, even though last year was a mess. I mean, that team was insane offensively, and I think he's a really good offensive coach.
That team at Oklahoma State also had an All-American point guard.
Yeah, but that was a good team.
It was a good team, but they had a lot of talent.
We'll see. I'm not giving up on him yet. Trent Frazier could be an all Big Ten player.
Okay, I'm going hard sell on Illinois and this regime. Northwestern.
If Tony Carr is an addition by subtraction guy, then so is Bryant McIntosh. I know he probably was like the most loved Northwestern player ever. He got him to the tournament, but
that's a big sentence. Okay, go ahead.
Their offense can be better without him. He shot too many mid-range shots. He didn't shoot it well last year. I think they just need a fresh start. We'll see if it's actually going to work. They have the kid from Evansville coming in who was sort of the extreme version of Bryant McIntosh. I think he led the country in percentage of shots taken while he was on the floor. So he'll be comfortable getting up shots, but it's hard to know how a up grad transfer is going to do.
Well, they also have they also got the BC kid, don't they? Turner, AJ Turner.
Yep, the Michigan kid, AJ Turner. They have some pieces. They have a good freshman class coming in. I don't know that it's a tournament team, but could you really make a sell that any of these teams are locks to be tournament teams? They have Vic Law as a senior. Like, they have some pieces. They're not going to be terrible.
No, I like Derek Pardon. I like Vic Law. I like Derek Pardon. But they just weren't very good last year, and I don't. Let's see a influx of talent that's going to propel them anywhere. That would be in the conversation of they have. This looks like a team to me that's going to win 6 games and beat someone and really mess up their season.
That's fair. I think that it speaks to how far Northwestern's kind of come as a program that they could bring in 2 4-star freshmen, a grad transfer average like 20 points a game, and a transfer from Boston College who's pretty good, and people are just completely down on them. Like, that would be the biggest influx of talent Northwestern's ever had a decade ago.
Yep.
So that says something, I think, because they have 2 fresh. I mean, Pete Nance, super skinny but highly touted. Miller Kopp is the guy who I think will
There's
come in.
There's no way
Nance
is ready to play. There's no way he's ready to play.
No. He's a classic by the time he is ready to play, he's also ready to declare for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be he fits that mold. The Marcus Bingham, DJ Wilson, they're all in that same mold. But Miller Kopp is more of a 6'6" guy, multi-position, shoot, do a little bit of everything, who is ready to play. I think he'll play a role for them.
And, man, I don't even know what to make of Rutgers anymore. I mean, I really like Steve Peichel. He's a good man, good program. But I have tried to come up with, like, what it would look like for Rutgers to find a different story, right? Like, to look different, to be different. And it seems like this is it.
Play
man.
defense.
Like, they do play defense, but like I just don't know if they're ever going to have the talent to get into even the middle of the pack. It's really difficult to see a way because like unless they're pulling two of the best 5 kids out of New Jersey every year, it's not happening because when you talk about the best 5 kids coming out of Jersey, probably at least a couple of them are being bought somewhere. And then the other ones are either going to go to a better school or Rutgers still has to compete with Seton Hall and the New York schools. And when you have not won in forever, no one's ever seen Rutgers win. Like, anyone under, I'm 36 and I'm from out there and like I can remember seeing like an NIT game at the RAC one year. And it was like, that was like Rutgers basketball being competitive. And I don't know. I mean, I wish Steve luck, but.
And they're just going to keep dragging the rest of the Big Ten down.
It really, it's
probably
rough.
Costs the league a tournament bid every year just because everyone has to play them. Drags the whole RPI down. That's a wrap for the Big Ten. Every podcast we can just end with the sad story of Rutgers.
I like the fact that in the middle of their non-conference play, after they play at Miami, then they come back and they get their 2 Big Ten games. Their 2 December Big Ten games are home against Michigan State and at Wisconsin. So it's like that's the other thing for Wisconsin. Like they're always just going to be the dog when it comes to scheduling, right? Like they're never going to get a game that benefits them. They're never going to get a setup that benefits them. Because the teams like Michigan State and Wisconsin, they don't want important Big Ten games in December, right? They don't want to play Michigan or Purdue or whatever it may be. Like they want the weakest games possible, and the league is going.
You mean they get a say in that?
Oh, come on. It's going to be that way. So poor Rutgers now is going to. I mean, you can just pencil them in at 0-2. Going into actual conference play. Without a doubt. They have no chance of winning either of those games.
We're going to have to do a deep dive into December Big Ten scheduling here.
Well, I think Purdue played like a real game last year, maybe. But
Michigan played a real game.
What'd they have?
Michigan played Indiana at home and went to Ohio State.
Yeah, but Ohio State was supposed to be trash last year. Like on paper going into the year, that looked like
a 500 record for those 2 games.
Possibly. Well, I mean, the Indiana and Ohio State both looked like they weren't supposed to be particularly good last year. There was a reason both had first-year head coaches. They didn't
look like Rutgers.
Well, this is true, but there's only one Rutgers, which that should be their billboard. Okay. Do we have anything else on this outline that you wanted to say? It doesn't.
I think this is a wrap.
That's it. We went way long. All right. I don't think the podcast is going to be this long every time, but we had a lot to squeeze in here, so I can't imagine anyone listened to an hour and 24 minutes of all of this. But if you did, God bless you. So, all right, we'll be back. I guess next week, Dylan.
Yep, right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Preview the Gavitt games.
Oh, yeah, Gavitt games. At some point, Michigan State will get in there. We're going to talk about that next week, is Dylan's anger over the fact that Michigan State still has not played a Gavitt games
confusion
matchup. Confusion is a better word. You're right. but it is weird. But they say they're going to play one every year for the next 4 years or something.
That's what the contract says.
I wrote about it at some point. I don't remember what it was or what the hell I said, but okay. Is that it for you? You got anything else? Any parting messages?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Well, I'm good too. Thanks to everyone for listening. And I guess I shouldn't use my old sign off from the last podcast, should I? A podcast that's not to be named.
Seems like you've already gone too far.
All right. I'll come up with a good sign off for moving forward, but I got nothing today. So thanks for listening, everyone.